Okay, I'm just gonna start recording this immediately. Wait, where's Sailor at? Oh my goodness, hello.
He's so cute.
Also, this is so funny to be on Zoom because I feel like I was literally just with you like two
I
days.
know, like
Yeah.
4
And
ago.
I'm like, oh wow, we're in like totally different states, but that's how it goes.
Hey, you're in a house though.
I know. Well, yes, mostly in a house. It's a tiny house, which is honestly pretty great because it kind of has everything that you need, but it's tiny and it's a house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just standing outside the van, or Sailor like jumped out of the van, so I hopped out to be like, Sailor, come back. And
Mhm.
these two ladies I know were walking their dogs, and one of them had come to one of the housing meetings, and I was
Mhm.
like, hey, this is my home.
Also, did you end up, what was the story with the LA Times interview?
Oh, so they like came out, they were like, can you show us your campsite? So I drove out to my campsite and they like took a bunch of pictures and asked a bunch of questions, and that was it.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So is it all going to be like in the magazine or is it like its own thing?
I think it's gonna be like in the paper.
Wow, that's
I
really
know.
exciting.
I'm gonna like send my parents the article and be like, I'm in the paper for being homeless.
That's pretty awesome. Okay,
Yeah.
let's jump into it because I know you have a meeting that is at like 6:15, so we can kind of just start
Yeah,
getting
I'll be
into
there
things.
6:30. So
Okay,
okay.
perfect.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I feel like a little bit of background. Um, Starting the podcast, like I mean, part of this conception was because of our conversation. And so I feel like starting this podcast is just really exciting because I feel like it's all of those conversations that women often have with each other that you're like, oh my gosh, wow, a light totally just went off. So I think just learning about other people's stories and being able to hear those and have a platform to kind of amplify that is kind of a big reason why we're here talking and starting
Yeah.
this today, which
Like,
is crazy. Um, yeah, so do you want to just start off and give a little bit of a background of who you are, what you spend your time doing, and then we can kind of riff off of that for a little bit.
sweet. Um, should I like say my full name? I'm Emily Markstein. Currently living in my van in Mammoth Lakes. Um, I moved into my car 6 years ago, and I've been between my car, apartments, and my house. And I usually work seasonally. And in between working, I'm traveling all over the US and all over the world. So I kind of base my life around traveling, but also uh, with environmental work too.
Yeah. Well, and so you did your undergrad on the East Coast, and
Yeah,
then, yes. And
yeah. So I
that,
was born in upstate New York, and both my parents, like, we had a little farm, we had pigs, and like we grew our own vegetables, and we had apple trees. And so I grew up, we made almost all our food homemade, and we were outside. Both my parents were teachers. So I spent my summers like hiking and biking and camping and canoeing and doing all the outdoor fun stuff. And then I went to college in upstate New York for history. And then I took a trip for my dissertation to Europe, and I was like, I'm going to move here. And so I applied to grad school in the UK and ended up uh, I think I was 21, and I moved to Scotland for grad school, and then spent that year doing my grad program and traveling all over Europe, and just like fell in love with traveling. And then got back to the US and moved to Vermont to do an environmental AmeriCorps program. And when I had breaks, I was traveling. I think I went to Costa Rica. I did a road trip across the whole US. Went back to Europe, to Scotland to visit my friends there, and then uh, drove my car all the way from Vermont out to California, and
Mhm.
became a ski bum. And yeah, just kept traveling and figuring out how to save the planet.
Yeah, I love it. I think the other thing that I wanted to highlight at the beginning of this too is just like this is all about kind of bringing almost like a normality to women that are highly educated and pursuing a career and also just balancing this adventure lifestyle. And so being able to just like hear other people's stories is so cool. Um, so yeah, so I want to dive a little bit more into just the kind of like educational experience piece of it, because when we were talking last week, like just getting to even hear about like your initial experiences in Vermont doing the AmeriCorps was really cool. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so my parents were both teachers, and so they kind of like really pushed me to be a teacher too. But I was like,
Hmm.
high school, I'm going to be
Yeah.
a professor. So I went to grad school, and it was a 1 year grad program. And I had studied history in undergrad because I love reading and I love history, but my life kind of did a big flip flop between my undergrad and my grad. And basically, it wasn't a flip flop. It was just like going back to how I was as a kid, just like,
Yeah.
love being outside and nature and everything. And so I started my grad program. And about 3 weeks in, I was supposed to be studying gender in the Middle Ages. And 3 weeks in, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? So I actually almost dropped out of grad school, but the director of my program was awesome. And he let me sort of create my own dissertation and program. And what I ended up studying was climate change impacts on heritage management. So
Hmm.
I got to, there was this guy that worked at St. Andrews that was doing a bunch of research on climate change and historic sites and artifacts and everything. And so for my dissertation, I got to go to these caves that were on the coast of Scotland, and we were doing digital recordings of them because they're under threat from sea level rise. So I ended up not spending my time in the library, which is what I did not want to do. And I ended up crawling around in these caves and like studying these Pictish carvings in the caves. And I was like, okay, I'm on the right track after like almost dropping out.
And
And
this
then
is all in Scotland.
this was all in Scotland. Yeah, in the pouring rain, but at least the cave was dry. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm never gonna get an environmental job because I have a 4 year history degree, and then 1 year master's in climate science and activism. Um, so my friend sent me this link to this environmental AmeriCorps program in Vermont. Um, and they ended up picking me. Later, I found out they picked me not because I was qualified, but because they thought I was interesting.
Mhm.
Thank you to them for thinking I was interesting in hiring me, because that kind of snowballed a career in environmentalism and just like continual education in that sort of field.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. How was it that you also kind of picked to go to Scotland? Because I mean, that really plays into kind of like your fun travel
Yeah,
and yeah.
it's kind of a funny story. So I my first time ever abroad, I saved and I saved and I saved for like 4 years because I couldn't afford to study abroad. So I was like, I'm going to do my own trip with my friends. And the school ended up giving me a grant so I could work on my dissertation. So I flew to England and spent a week there. And then I flew to Italy to do the research. But when I was in England, I fell in love with London. And it was my first time abroad. And I
Mhm.
remember walking into this corner store and I had the best yogurt of my life. And after eating this yogurt, I was like, I'm moving to the UK. And
That's actually so funny because I have had the exact same experience with that. I think it was when I studied abroad in Italy,
mhm,
and there was a grocery store that I went into. I was just like bopping around Naples by myself. Like
yeah,
I think I was just like running around the city or something. And I like went in and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I just need like a snack, a yogurt or something." And it was like literally the best yogurt I think I've had in my entire life. It's amazing. And so every time I couldn't find that specific yogurt like anywhere else that I was traveling to. And so every time I was like taking a ferry through Naples that summer, I was just like stopping in and like getting the yogurt. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible.
yogurt changed our life, I guess.
I guess so. Yeah.
Um, where was I? Oh yeah, so I in undergrad I was studying gender in the Middle Ages, and I was like, okay, I'll do this in grad school and be a professor. Um, and the best grad programs for the Middle Ages were in the UK. And they also had
Okay. Yeah.
1 year grad program, and it was much cheaper.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's how I ended up in Scotland. And also my mom's side of the family, they like traced their ancestry back. So I grew up hearing all about Scotland, and I was like, oh, I want to go there. So I ended up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's super cool. And that just like it's also just neat to be able to go be in the UK or Europe too, because it's like you can just fly so many different places. And like I feel like that for me also just like opened up a very different realm of where I could travel or like what I could be doing there or like, just kind of like opening that door to like there's all of these different ways to do things where like even like with my family, like my family is such a like road trip family. And
Mhm.
so like being able to just like fly to Europe and then like go on like little weekend trips or like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm just gonna go stay in these huts and hike around for a little bit, it definitely like changes your perspective on what you can do.
totally.
Yeah.
And it's like there's so much culture in such a small space. Like you can experience so many different cultures in 1 month if you're traveling around you, which is really amazing.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Okay, so you did Scotland and then got back. You were on the East Coast. And then after that, that's when you moved out to Mammoth and you skied.
Yep.
And I kind of want to dive into this a little bit too, because I feel like that is a bit of a transformation, or like that's like a big change going from grad school to then like, okay, I'm going to pursue this outdoor lifestyle and like live in my car, work at Mammoth, and then like walk me through kind of that thought process. And then like it's cool because I feel like now looking at it, it's like, oh my gosh, wow, like obviously those things mirror each other so well, where like you want to be outside and like you're interested in the climate activism and what's going on in the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because at the older I get, the more grateful I feel for my parents for just
Hmm.
raising me with the mentality of like, if you want to do something, do it. And my gender isn't going to stop me. And like, I didn't really realize that like boys and girls were quote unquote supposed to act different until like
Hmm.
ends of middle school, which I think for a lot of people is like pretty late to realize that. Uh, like my dad, I was always helping my dad fix the tractor and like the I would go hang out with him in the garage when I was little and he would like give me car parts to play with.
Yeah.
So part of it has to do with like just the way I was raised and I feel really grateful for that. But it kind of it kind of just snowballed. Like I did my grad program and then did 2 years of environmental work. So by the time I was 25, I was like really burnt out. And
Yeah.
like being 25 in the environmental field and burnt out is not okay. So
Hmm.
I was like, I'm going to take a winter off and I'm going to go be a ski bum because I always wanted to be a ski bum and I'd fallen in love with snowboarding. So I moved out to Mammoth and I was supposed to be here for one winter, but then I just saw how people lived differently out here and it was really appealing to me. And so I moved into my car and just kind of became your classic dirtbag climber.
Yeah.
I was like, all I want to do, I had watched the movie Valley Uprising 2 years before, and Valley Uprising is about like the climbing in Yosemite. And it was talking about the dirt bags and that. And I was like, I'm gonna do that one day. And so I moved out to Mammoth, did my ski bum season, and then became like a total dirtbag climber. Like I remember one time I was sleeping on a crash pad on the side of the road in El Portel because I couldn't afford gas to drive in and out of the valley, and I
Oh
just wanted
my
to
goodness.
climb. And there's a
Oh my
photo
goodness.
somewhere. But yeah, I think it was just seeing how people in Mammoth lived differently, and I wanted to do that, so I did it. And
Were there,
then
yeah. Were there any particular people that you met that like kind of inspired that change?
I think me and my friend Lily, we did ski school together, and turns out ski school was not our favorite thing.
Uh-huh.
We both wanted to get really into rock climbing, and housing in Mammoth is really hard. So Lily and I were like, we're gonna do this together. We're gonna move into our cars and we're gonna become rock climbers. Uh,
Hmm.
so yeah, I would say Lily and I just like went for it, but I hadn't really met anybody that lived in their van yet. I just knew people were doing it, and Lily and I just we just went for it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think like that's the thing. You do really just have to go for it because it's like, especially with living in your van or like living in your vehicle. I mean like even like with me, like I kind of did the same thing where it was like, okay, I don't necessarily know anybody right now that's doing this, but like I do know of this greater community that's doing it. But then it's really cool because then you meet people that are doing it and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm not crazy.
Yeah, totally. Like if I had been anywhere but Mammoth, it might not have happened. But because there's such a big car van dwelling community here,
Mm-hmm.
like the past 6 years have been great. And like, we met and then we were
Yep.
like, oh my God, we live in our vans. This is so
Yeah.
cool. And so it's like
Yeah.
the community aspect of it is probably my favorite part.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and you're just meeting, yeah, you're meeting like-minded people, which is really cool and unique.
totally.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I just had a thought and then it totally left my brain.
You all the time.
No, you were saying something though before I think I cut you off with the van.
Hmm.
It was Yosemite, people that were striking inspiration, just going and doing it.
I think it was that movie, like the Valley Uprising movie, that made me be like, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
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 And then like just living in a place where other people were doing it made it happen.
Yeah. Do you think if you were talking to like your past self, do you feel like you would have done anything differently or like had a mindset switch on any like what are like two pieces of advice or things that you would tell yourself then?
Yeah, I think it's I've talked to like so many of my girlfriends about this, like those of us that are like have gone to college and are pursuing a career, is like it's all gonna work out. And it didn't really click for me until like last year. Like I went to Nepal in the spring, and a lot of stuff shifted for me internally. That was like it's all gonna work out and it's all gonna be fine. Because I spent, even though I did grad school and I did the environmental thing in Vermont, I still spent like all my time out in Mammoth worrying about like nobody's gonna hire me, like, you know, am I gonna have my dream environmental job? And now I'm in the mindset of like it's gonna work out and it's all gonna happen and everything's gonna be fine. And now I have all these like really amazing opportunities coming my way. And I just wish
Mhm.
that I hadn't worried so much. And I had a lot of fun, but I was also worrying like, oh man, maybe I shouldn't be rock climbing 5 days a week and I should be pursuing a career instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's just like maybe part of your 20s and then the shift into your 30s, which I thought was a total joke. Everybody was like, when you're 30 it all changes, and I was like, no way. And now I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it.
Totally. Yeah. Um, yeah. Okay, also so I definitely want so I kind of want to jump into this too because like you did your undergrad in history, and then you did this master's degree, and then you did the AmeriCorps, and then you jumped into like you were kind of echoing that, like, okay, like I don't know what my career is gonna look like in this. So then you jumped into Hot Creek Mammoth stuff.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was a crazy 3 year adventure. And so my friend Amber and I, during COVID, we'd go biking together. And Amber, also like us, super motivated, really into the outdoors, does all the awesome things, like very intelligent, has career goals. And both of us would go on these bike rides and we would just dreaming about combining our adventure sports with climate activism or social justice issues. And I was actually driving back from Alaska because I spent a summer in Alaska. And I was driving back from Alaska, and Amber texted me and she's like, dude, there's this like tiny, like 3 sentence thing in the newspaper, and they're trying to put a mine in at Hot Creek. And Hot Creek is within 10 miles of Mammoth Lakes. It's like an iconic geologic site that all the tourists go to, all the locals go to it. It's an amazing spot. And this Canadian company was proposing to put a gold mine in. And so Amber and I held a protest, and then it kicked off this like huge activism project that took over my life. And it was kind of perfect because I was like ready to go back into the environmental field. I'd like recovered from my burnout, and I had this new amazing like van life slash adventure sports life, and I wanted to combine the two. And then this activism project gave me the perfect opportunity for that. So I spent 3 years
Right.
of my life fighting this gold mine, and recently we just won in court. And uh the goal of activism is to eventually be unemployed. So I was out of my activism job, and we were successful in stopping this mining company from coming into our town.
Okay, and so what was your foot in the door with that? mining activism? Because you saw it in the newspaper and then you were like, I want to be involved in that. And like with those things, like how did you start getting your foot in the door with that? Yeah.
Amber and I like literally started everything. We we created a Facebook event for a protest on Main Street in Mammoth,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and put an ad in the newspaper, and then like 40 or 50 people showed up, and we were just like, "Oh my god, this worked."
Mm-hmm.
And at the event, we had three other people reach out to us. Chris Bubser, who ran for Congress, who's this like amazing, activist in our community
Yeah.
and pillar in the Mammoth community. And then Jeff McElroy works for Patagonia and lives in Crowley, which is just down the road. And he reached out. And then Matt McLean, who's done some other activism stuff. And so the five of us created this organization called No Hot Creek Mine because Amber and I were like, we're having a protest. And it
Mm-hmm.
was crazy. Like we started this whole thing, and like we have over 1,600 followers on Instagram. Patagonia sponsored us. We have like a bunch of short films out. So it really went from like, oh, it's just one protest to like, I was on the Dirtbag Diaries. Like, oh my God, we made it big for this activism issue.
Yeah. Well, and this was your guys' concept that like you just were like, we care about this and we want to see something done with it. And then just started it up, reached out to people. Like that's the part that I'm like, holy cow, that's so cool because I feel like there's so many different things and like especially in your local community wherever it is that you're at because wherever you're living that's where you're going to be the most passionate. Like I'm not going to pick up the Mammoth Times and be like, what's this mine that's being proposed? Just because I don't know the area as well, and like I don't have that emotional attachment to it. So I think hearing something like that, I'm just like, holy cow, that's so inspirational because if I do see something in my local community that I'm just like, wait, I don't love this, I don't love what it stands for, then it's like you can actually start to make a difference from that and go and win a court case if you really put your mind to it. Yeah.
Totally. Totally. And like, yeah, I mean, if I didn't grow up with the mentality of like, if you want to do it, it might not have happened.
Yeah.
And it was
Well,
just
yeah.
like, we're just going to go for it.
Mhm.
Like we care about this. We love our community. The land around here needs to be protected. Like, fuck this mining company. We're doing
Yeah.
something.
And like so that also because before that you had done a bit in the environmental sector, but nothing huge. And so going from that background to then taking on this huge project, how do you feel like that impacted the way that you see yourself in this field and like what you can do with it moving forward?
I think this project was one of the most important things in my life because I remember starting out on the project and I was like shy and I was just like really nice, and in
Mm-hmm.
meetings I was like kind of quiet, and over the 3 years it just taught me, I mean, I learned so much from it, and it taught me that like, A, if you care about something, stand up for it. B, if like, it doesn't matter, like, as women, I think so often we stand in the background and we second guess ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And like, no, our voices matter, and our opinions are important, and like we are such a pillar on this earth as a whole, and it's time for us to like really have our voices be heard. And I think Chris Bubser was like such an influence on me because she stands in front of people and tells them what she thinks, and she doesn't care what they say because the issues that are important to her she's going to fight tooth and nail for. And like, with her working on this project with me, she just really inspired me to like allow myself to take up space and allow my voice to be heard. And so now in my life it's like I don't have any problem keeping my mouth shut.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
sure I've made some people mad and uncomfortable, but like the issues that we care about are important, and our voices deserve to be heard and listened to.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's big because having that confidence means that you can walk into a room and be like, "Hey, this is what I know, this is what I can do, this is what, this is how we can make a difference." Yeah. Do you feel like career-wise as well that like what are some of those besides the confidence piece of it, like how has it changed your kind of methods of even like thinking about what you're gonna do next? Yeah.
Yeah, I think because so the five of us ran the project for the first year, and then the second 2 years I ran the project because everybody else moved or was too busy. So everything kind of fell onto me. So all of a sudden it went from like everybody's doing a different piece of the puzzle to I'm doing everything.
Yeah.
And it gave me a lot of skills that I can then transfer into like, any job. So like for example, right now I'm helping people running for office in the state of California. I'm just helping run their social media. I'm helping them design websites, just like remote work that allows me the flexibility to save money, to plan for adventures, to
Hmm.
take the dog for a hike in the middle of the day and just live my
Hmm.
life the way I want to. And so because I ran the project myself and I was my own boss, I was like, this is how I operate best,
Hmm.
being my own boss and doing the things like the way I want to do them and I like to do them. And also, like, I know I'm good at my job, whereas like 3 years ago, before I started this project, I like really questioned my skills and my ability. And now I'm like, no, I know what I'm good at. And if you don't want to hire me, somebody else will. And it's
Hmm.
kind of crazy to like even hear myself say that out loud because it took 3 years of like running an activism project to like get to this point, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just so much experience that now you have where, yeah, you're good at your job.
Yes, I know. And like so many women are, and I just like want to inspire other women to be like, actually, no, like I deserve to be in the front of the room. I deserve to be the leader on a team. And I think
Hmm.
so often we step down or step to the side because um somebody else's voice is louder, or a man maybe has more confidence even though he might have less skills. Something like that.
Or just second guessing ourselves too.
Yeah,
Like, I catch myself doing that all the time where it's just like, oh, like, I don't know, like maybe I don't have the most experience in the room, but you often know what you're doing way more than you give yourself credit for.
totally. And but like, yeah, if you met me 3 years ago, I wouldn't have the confidence to be like, yeah, I deserve this much money an hour to run your social media.
Mhm.
I would have been $12 an hour.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so then after the project, you were in Nepal. That was, or is that the right chronological order there?
Yeah. So when I was doing the project, I was like traveling, and so I worked at a restaurant actually to pay the bills because activism doesn't pay the bills.
Hmm.
Um, and so I traveled to Vietnam, I traveled to Thailand, I traveled to Hawaii, but recently, um, the 3 year mark on the project hit this spring, and conveniently we won the court case, and I didn't really have any work to do, and I decided to go to Nepal for a couple months. Uh,
Hmm.
so I spent 3 months in Nepal, and I did about 2 months of trekking and traveling, and then I did a month of yoga training, and that trip was like also a huge turning point in my life. Just like teaching me so much about traveling alone and figuring things out as I go. And the yoga training was really, that mental health aspect of is like important to all of this. And that really like changed a lot in terms of my mental health, and also like boosted my confidence and my ability to do things too.
Hmm. What specifically with the yoga training do you feel like was changing your mentality on things?
Oh man. I mean, well, so the like backstory to the Nepal trip was I was supposed to go there with my boyfriend at the time, and then
Mhm.
he broke up with me like day 4 of us getting there. And so I had to figure everything out, you know,
Huge pivot of plans.
huge pivot. And then so I was like getting over this breakup while trekking and doing the yoga training. And I think the teachers that I had at the yoga training really instilled in us like being in the present moment, letting things go, and just like really working on accepting everything in life just the way it is. And it was a lot of those big questions a lot of us have with mental health and like anxiety or depression, or just experiencing suffering. And I think the yoga training was a month long, and was really like a month long practice in letting everything go and accepting things the way they are, and finding joy
Hmm.
in every single moment in life. And it really just changed. Like, I feel like it just changed everything for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. See, now my Zoom's like, now you need to upgrade to Pro, which is so annoying because I did that. I was trying to find that button earlier today and I like couldn't find it anywhere. I was like, yeah, I know I need to upgrade to Pro, but it wouldn't let me do it. So now I'm gonna do that. Oh, can I do it right now? I think I can. Oh, come on, Zoom. Momentary break.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm gonna grab my phone charger.
okay,
Perfect
perfect.
timing.
Oh, is it gonna make me log in? Oh, but I just did this. I think I can do
Hi, buddy. You wanna lay in here? Come on.
it. Wait a second. Sign up? No, I want to sign in.
Hey, buddy. Yeah.
Zoom. Was that it? Dang. I need to just like write down every single password I've ever made ever.
I
And
started
like
doing that.
I've started doing it, but there's some things that I like still don't have it with. And I need to put Zoom in it. Okay. This is almost there.
I wonder if this is too dark. No, we're good. Switching. Perfect.
Okay. Continue the payment. What the heck is that?
Yeah. Hold on.
Okay, I think that worked.
Oh, it's upgraded. Yes, I got a notification that said it got upgraded.
There
Woo!
it is. That was so funny. I was literally trying to like, I was like on Zoom and I was like, where is that button? Like, and then I got lost in settings and then I got all confused. Anyways, that's how you find it. You just have to let it run out of time. Also there's like, I think my water boiler just like magically turned on. It's very perplexing. Weird. Also, super quick side note. This is the bike.
Oh my God. Woo! It's so exciting.
I went and rode like 50 miles yesterday because I was like so excited. I like got it and put pedals on it and I was like, oh, I need to go for a bike ride. So I did and it was great. Okay, back to it.
Yeah.
Nepal, yoga, backstory. I wanted to jump into because you went to Nepal and then you did two huge treks. Like, how did you find
Yes.
out about the treks? Who were you doing them with? Like, give the whole story to that, because that's just also super cool and takes a lot to just go to Nepal and then go trekking.
So I think so the original plan was I'm gonna prop my phone up. There we go. The original plan was to go there with this said boyfriend, and um, our relationship was already like very questionable, so we
Mhm.
didn't plan anything. And we
Right.
were like, we'll figure it out when we get there. And I was like, okay. Like one of the things I wanted to work on because I've always been a planner, I was like, I just want to be that traveler that just shows up and figures it out. And it was
Mhm.
really scary. I think like a lot of us that travel, like people look at us and they're like, oh wow, like you just do it and you're so brave. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's still really scary. I've been traveling for 10 years and it's still scary sometimes. Um, just like intimidating to figure everything out by yourself. So, yeah, relationship ended and I was like, what do I do? And my friend Nicole had been to Nepal and she had done the Annapurna trek. So I was like, you know what? I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm gonna go trek Annapurna.
Mm-hmm.
So I relationship ended. I bought I bought a plane ticket to Pokhara, which was either a 10-hour bus ride or a 40-minute flight. Bought the plane ticket, showed up at the airport 2 hours later, and flew to Pokhara. And then I was like, okay, I gotta figure out how to do this. And I bought a map at like one of those street vendors, and I
Yeah.
strategically went to the table in the middle of the hostel and opened up my map just to be like, maybe somebody will come to my table and ask me questions about trekking. And this Dutch couple sat down and started talking to me, and they were like, well, we're going to do Annapurna too. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's all split a Jeep. And then there ended up being 6 of us that split a Jeep. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, we'll share this Jeep and then we'll all go our separate ways. But what ended
Mm-hmm.
up happening was we all became really good friends, and we did the trek together, and everybody hiked at different paces, but we all stayed at the tea house every night together.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like one of the most amazing times of my life, because I was like broken up with, confused, really excited about hiking. Um, and didn't know anything about Annapurna. I was just like, I'm just gonna get in the Jeep with these people and see what happens. Like I didn't plan anything. And we spent, I think it was 10 days trekking. And I still talk to the people this day. Like we all became super close friends. And then for my second trek, I did 3 passes, which is in the Everest region, and it shares part of the trail with Everest Base Camp. And my friend Bree from Mammoth, she flew over to hike this trail with me and do the yoga training together. Um, so Bree and I went and did 3 passes, but we only did one out of the 3 passes because I had diarrhea for 10 days. I lost 15 pounds in a week. And yeah, the whole time we were hiking, I was sick. So we only did one of the 3 passes, but we still ended up hiking for like 12 days and being out in the Everest region for like 14 days. And it
Which
was
is a
amazing.
lot. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, big mountains for 12 days is still a lot. Well, I think especially with the Annapurna Circuit one, like that's it is such a common story where it's like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? And then like you sit down at a hostel and meet a bunch of super sick people, and then it's like, oh my gosh, now we're all best friends, and like
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like totally one of those things where it's like, okay, like you were saying with the yoga training, like I'm just letting go. We're gonna see what happens, and then stuff just falls back into place, which is super sick. And like,
Right.
yeah, mountains cure a breakup faster than anything else.
I know.
Because you like stare at the mountain, you're like, I'm staring at a mountain.
I know. In Nepal, at a mountain.
Yeah,
This
like I'm
silly
in
boy.
Nepal at a tea house right now. Like, there's
Yeah.
nothing else I'd rather be doing.
Yeah.
Um, And so you did that trip, and it was more on that kind of like unplanned side, which I think is one, you know, you have the planned versus the unplanned travel.
Yeah.
And so you've also done a lot of really well-planned travel.
Yes.
Yes. Do you want to give a little backstory on one of those trips?
Totally. I feel like when I first started traveling Europe when I was in grad school, I did a lot of I planned a lot of stuff. And my friend Emily and I, another badass lady who got her law degree from Harvard and travels all over the world.
Holy cow. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Emily and I, we ended up being roommates in Scotland, 2 Emilys from America.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we did, like for example, one trip we went to Spain for like 2 weeks, I think, and we planned all the towns we were gonna go to, and like we didn't plan the bus, like we booked the bus tickets there, but like we
Yeah.
were like we're gonna go to these museums, um, and we planned everything out pretty well, like what days we're going where. And then I've traveled around Europe a lot, but it wasn't until I started traveling in Asia and Southeast Asia that I kind of started doing the unplanned travel, because like when I went to Vietnam, which was the first country in Asia I went to, you can't really plan too much because not
Mm-hmm.
everything's online, and the
Mm-hmm.
best information you're gonna get is from like the hostel owners and like staff. So the way I did that was like I booked my ticket to Vietnam and I booked my hostel for the first 2 nights, and then just kind of chatted with people in the hostel to see what they were doing, if anybody recommended anything. So what I would do is I would go to a hostel, explore a region for a couple days, and then book my bus ticket and the next hostel, and then show up there and just do whatever people recommended.
Mhm. Yeah.
And yeah, that was kind of the start of my unplanned traveling.
Mhm. Well, and then you also have the adventure travel, like
Yeah.
pack biking in Alaska. Like, I guess in my yeah, when I was asking that question, I'm like, that is a hugely planned and adventure travel experience. Like,
um, Hold on, I'm gonna grab Sailor.
no problem.
Come here, Sailor, Sailor, Sailor. Come on, Sailor.
Yeah, how's Sailor liking the van?
Get in the van. Load up, load up. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was the question?
Question was, yeah, how did so there was planned, unplanned, and then like adventure travel, which takes like a huge amount of planning. And it's
Yeah,
also like super intimidating because it's like it takes so many logistics and you have to have the idea and it's like, oh, do I even go do this? Because like, I'm like a small blonde girl or something, you know?
yeah,
So like, how did you, yeah, what was the inspiration there? Because this is also something I don't feel like we didn't get any of into any of the logistics in this when we were in Mammoth.
totally. And it's funny because I started writing my bike rafting
Oh
art
yeah, yeah.
today, which is so exciting. So it's all fresh in my brain. So I wanted to get into whitewater rafting a couple years ago, maybe 5 years ago, 4 years ago. So I was like, and I want to go to Alaska. So I'm gonna go to Alaska and I'm gonna work for a rafting company. And I drove my van all the way up to Alaska. And the rafting company I ended up working for made me drive the van. And so I quit after like 2 weeks because I was like,
Mhm.
and then I ended up finding a really sweet environmental job because I'm just happier doing that. Um, so I worked for the Denali, like the science center there that partners with the park,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
is really cool. So I did the environmental thing, and then I bought a pack raft and learned how to raft like do whitewater stuff. Um, so yeah, I kind of just loaded everything I owned into my van and drove from California to Alaska. Um, and then I saw this book in the gear store up in Fairbanks that was called Bike Rafting, and it's the only book out there. And there's
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
That's like that's so niche and so perfect.
it's so neat. And I was like, I really want to do this. Um, so I did kind of like I think it was like a 3 day trip. It was 2 days of biking and 1 day of pack rafting, and it's
Mhm.
crazy. So I knew a guy with a bush plane in Alaska, so I put my bike and my raft in the bush plane
Oh
and
my gosh.
flew me out to the Denali Highway, landed on the road in
Mhm.
Alaska. I get out, I pack up my bike, and then I just start biking. And I biked for 2 days to, I don't remember the name of the tributary, but it was a tributary to the Nenana River. And so I paddled down that with my bike strapped to the front of my pack raft. And then I paddled down that tributary, popped out in the Nenana, and then pulled out on the side of the highway. Took my dry suit off, put my biking clothes back on, loaded my bicycle back up with my pack raft, and then biked back to my van.
Holy cow. And this is just you.
No, it was me and my
Okay.
partner at the time.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's I mean, that's also a crazy amount of like doing something like that with another person is like you guys have to definitely be able to get along biking and pack rafting together.
totally. And, like also want to join me on this crazy idea I had.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a lot, but also just so cool and just such a fun, a different way to travel as well and take advantage of like being in Alaska and being able to do that.
Yeah, and I'm like recent so I hadn't after Alaska I came back to California, and where I live in California there's just not a ton of water. So um I brought my pack raft out to a ton of lakes in the Sierra, but um I haven't done any bike rafting since then. But now I'm like really excited about it again. So
Mhm.
I'm potentially planning a bike rafting trip down in Chile for the winter. Um and that's probably going to be a wing it trip as well
Mhm.
because there's not a ton of information online. And then yeah, I'm like asking myself all the questions that you mentioned, like how do I get my bike down there, how do I get my pack raft down there? And it's extra
Totally.
too. It's not like I just pack up my backpack and show up in another country. You have to like make sure you have all your gear, and spend the extra money on getting it down to wherever you're going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, what do you like foresee? This was going to be my next question of like, okay, what is it that you're planning for the future right now? And like, what are some of the kind of like biggest obstacles that you face making that happen right now?
Oh, I love that question. So right now I'm planning on going down to Chile and Argentina for the winter. There's a bike route I want to do, and I also want to go to Patagonia and do some trekking. And there's also some pack rafting articles I've found online. So everything's kind of up in the air. And so my biggest hurdle right now is kind of like, because I don't like pack rafting alone, it can be really
Mhm.
sketchy. And there's like, I have a couple friends that are interested in maybe joining. And it's like, the big question is like, are they gonna pull this together and are we going on this trip, or am I gonna just end up in South America with my bike, which I'm also totally happy to do, but it would be so cool to pack raft down there as well. And one of my friends has a connection down in Puerto Williams, and um he mentioned that his friend also has a pack raft and his
Mhm.
friend has this route planned that he's never done, and I was like, we should do that. So I have a lot of options and cool connections. And I instinctively, because I've done so much planning in my life, I want to plan it so bad right now, but I just
Yeah,
have to like trust that it's all gonna work out because other people are involved. So yeah, my hurdle is like the other people and them figuring out their stuff and me figuring out my stuff.
totally, totally. The logistics of it and just, yeah, I know that organization is definitely challenging, especially when it's like, I think like be having such like an idea that you're like, I'm going to go do this,
Mm-hmm.
and like you're probably gonna go do some form of it no matter
Yeah.
what by yourself, like
Yes.
regardless if like other people come.
Totally.
I think like that's one of the other hard things is it's like, okay, like I could totally do this by myself, but like, it'd be, it changes the course of planning and thinking ahead for sure.
Right. And then it's like, like if it's just me, then the plan changes a little bit, but I'm still going to Chile and I'm still going to Argentina. It's just like, what gear do I bring?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. Okay, we should probably start wrapping it up because I don't want to hold you too long. But
Oh, I still got like 45 minutes.
oh,
So a lot more.
no, okay,
You
perfect.
are ask away.
Okay, perfect. I will keep asking away then. Okay, so you're going to Patagonia in Argentina and Chile. You have the environmental history and work background.
Yes.
And you how are you pitching it all together? Actually, oh no. I feel like this is going to be a series of questions. um actually, yeah, I'm going to pivot first. Um you have you have the van. You
Mhm.
have the work background of the environmentalism and Hot Creek in particular, and you also have the biking and adventure. Like right now, what are your favorite parts about your lifestyle?
Oh man. Oh God, it's crazy because it's like every day I wake up and I'm just like, oh my God, my life is so cool.
Hmm.
And it's kind of crazy to just have that feeling every day because I think like a lot of my life I've really struggled with um I really struggled with my mental health for a long time, like especially up in Alaska. Like I was pretty depressed when I was up there, and that's something that a lot of people don't talk about when we have this lifestyle, like I remember, yeah, I did these cool adventures, but like it was so hard to feel happy when I was doing them. And I really like I spent a lot of years in therapy, and uh like yoga really helped a lot. And it was cool to like be in Nepal and have this kind of crazy breakup and then be like, wow, I'm actually doing really well because I've spent years like trying to take care of myself, and like it's working, like all of the hard work that I put into my mental health it like worked. And I think it's like part of the story that a lot of people don't get when, we have this lifestyle. Um, but now, like, years of that work has paid off because I just wake up every day and I wake up with the sunrise because I like watching the sun come up every morning. And then right now I'm working remote, so I can work on my own hours. And I just get to wake up and decide what adventure I'm going on for the day. And then also, the other thing that is like really amazing about my life is like I really trust now. And like part of this podcast thing is like part of this greater project that we all have going on
Yeah,
is like really trusting that like I can create the life that I want instead of allowing limiting factors that are all in my brain, you know,
totally.
real,
Yeah,
stop from doing these things. And so yeah, I just kind of love that I have the skills to do the jobs that I want, to create the job that I want. And also, I don't have to sacrifice my freedom of like living in my van or traveling to another country. And but it's taken a lot of hard work to like get here.
totally. What are some of the examples of things that you feel like you were working through that were what was like a breakthrough moment for you when it comes to kind of like lifestyle stress and now that feeling of like, nope, like I'm not going to be stressing out over those things? Or
I
like, was it big things or little things or kind of like cumulative things? Because like I know like if I'm in the van and I think I often will plan, I'll be like, okay, I have 2 weeks because I'll do 2 weeks in the van
mm-hmm.
and 2 weeks of work. And so I'll
Yeah.
be like, okay, I have 2 weeks and like I have, you know, maybe 1, 2, 4 targeted things that I'm gonna do, and then I'll have quite a few days that I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna wake up, and then I start stressed out about like those little things of like, oh wait,
Mm-hmm.
where is it that I'm gonna sleep at night? Like, am I gonna
Yeah,
be sleeping in a place that like I'm comfortable sleeping, or
totally.
like, am I gonna be close enough to a grocery store to buy ice? Like, I feel like there's still a lot of like some of those little things that like just take time to get used to, but then there's also those like big overarching questions, and this I think this was something that we talked about as well, where it's like what what direction is my life going, and like being being okay with not knowing where your life is going.
I feel like my yoga training in Nepal, and it's like, I feel like this is so cliche to say, like, my yoga training changed my life. But it was like the years of hard work that I put into creating a better internal world. And then the yoga training was like the cherry on top of the ice or whatever the phrase is.
Yeah,
Um, the icing on the cake. There we go.
there we go.
It
Yeah.
was like the icing on the cake to everything. And I think it's like a lot of small things, like, like, oh man, like when do I get to go to the grocery store again? Or um like I think the bigger questions have always plagued me of like I need to make sure I'm on my career path, and like but also I don't want to sacrifice my free time in my adventure, and I feel like I stressed out so much about that.
Hmm.
And the root of that was this like need to control my life so that I felt safe. But the reality, and I had this big aha moment when I got back from Nepal that was like, there's really no difference between planning and not having a plan. And
Okay,
hopefully I can
wait,
say this
dive
in a
into
way that,
that a little bit more.
yes, hopefully I can say this in a way that makes sense. So when you have a plan in your mind, you're picturing the future happening a certain way, but it never happens that way. So really, even if you've created a plan, it's never exactly what you plan. And then
This is true.
having no plan, it things just happen. So really things just happen either way. So really
Mhm.
there's no point in me stressing about creating a plan that's not actually going to happen exactly the way I envision. Instead, just being in the present moment and trusting that like I have the skills to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And no matter what, I'm going to have fun.
And no matter what comes at you, you now know that you have the tool belt to take it on.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that was a big shift because now I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go to South America, but I'm not going to stress over having to figure it out right now in October when I might not be there until January.
Hmm.
And it just frees up it frees up my life to enjoy the present moment here and still be adventuring now in Mammoth.
Yeah, totally.
Hope I said that in a way that makes sense.
No, I think that totally makes sense because I totally agree. I am a chronic planner as well, where like even this week I was trying to figure out, okay, I'm working in Portland and like needed to book an Airbnb, but then I was like, I could just have a hotel. And like, usually I'm just always trying to, like figure out like, okay, where is it that I'm going to be on this day? Like, what is it
Yeah,
that I can have? But then always am changing my plan no matter what. And so
right.
like just being able to like wake up and be like, okay, no, like I know that I know that I have the ability to book the hotel when I get there even versus
Right.
like yeah, and I could
Totally.
like see what's open on that day versus like trying to stress weeks and weeks in advance of like where is it that I should be staying. Like it's not worth stressing about and planning that when no matter what it's no, that totally makes sense. Yeah. I I track
Yeah. And
but
it doesn't mean I
it
don't have
takes
those
practice
thoughts
though.
still. Yeah,
Yeah.
it takes practice. Like I still like last week I was like, "Oh my God, I have to figure everything out." And I spent
Mhm.
like a couple days being like researching stuff online and then I was like, "Hold on a minute. Like the big lesson we're practicing right now is to like not be doing that." And so just because I say that, you know, just because I say I believe that now doesn't mean I'm still not stressed out. Like it still happens.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What are some of the tools that you feel like you learned even like yeah, what are some of the tools that you feel like you learned just through life experience that helped you kind of get there? And then like what are some things, were there any like aha moments at that yoga training that really sunk in?
I feel like I mean I used to be such an anxious person and I think a lot of it had to do with like the way I was raised. Like I had to be the best at school, I had to be the best at playing music, I had to be the best at sports, and I always had to be doing something because that's the way my mom lived her life. And I never really sat down. I would be doing an adventure and thinking about the next adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And I this is another crazy story. So yeah, I was just like a really anxious person my whole life, even though I did cool stuff and I had fun. I just was always filled with anxiety. And then I had a rock climbing accident a couple years ago, and a rock fell and hit me in the back. And the crazy thing was, yeah, the accident was crazy, but what happened was all of these memories from a lot of trauma kind of like resurfaced. And I was like, I need to go to therapy and like address this. And I was kind of sick of myself. I was like, I'm sick of feeling like this. And I was so sick of myself. I was like, I need to change something. And then it took like years of like seeing a therapist and doing yoga and learning how to relax and allow my body to relax. And my climbing accident forced me to relax because I was your like classic, I'm going to run to the mountains and run in the mountains every day and avoid facing my problems. So it was like a long road of like learning how to regulate my nervous system, learning how to be in the present moment and like cultivating awareness. And then the yoga training, there's this big moment where I was sitting at the dinner table eating my fried rice, crying
Mm-hmm.
because it was so intense. You know, you're doing yoga, which really brings you into your body and brings you into your emotions and really makes you face things. And I'm like sitting at the dinner table crying, and the manager of the yoga academy came over and he like put his hands on my back. He's like, "Just let it go, Emily. Like, let it go." And that is gonna stick with me forever. I've just been like, just let it go. You know, like I have so much to be grateful for, and they really instilled that in us. Like each breath that we have in our life is something to be grateful for, and that's it. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
the immense gratitude we can just take from that can allow us to live a much more beautiful life, I think. And so yeah, it was a combination of like years of working on myself and putting my career to the side to work on myself, combined with like this big aha moment at the yoga training.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel bad like pivoting from that because I'm like, wow, that's like feel like that's like an end all be all like, yep, that's a fantastic thing to leave things on. But I do want to go back to the climbing accident in particular because I feel like
Yeah.
um it is especially like in your 20s and like you're just trying to figure it out you're
Yeah.
trying to find an identity in something, and I think a lot of us can get caught up in, almost overdoing where we're finding that identity, and like
Yeah.
especially with the outdoor world and like the climbing world in particular, you can just make it your everything where like
Yeah.
you live, eat, breathe climbing, and like that's who you are, that's who you're going to become, that's what
Hmm.
it's the end all be all. But I know that that can also happen across, it could be any sport, and like I think for us in particular, we're often surrounding ourselves in those places that prioritize sport, whether it be biking, running,
Yeah.
etc. But it could also be your work or your workplace or your company, or it could be, the Pilates gym that you go to, and that becomes.
Totally.
But so I think like how did you, why were you, yeah, what did that accident do for you, and like how did that shake your sense of identity, especially with that climbing?
Yeah, that I feel like I've talked to so many people about this because it was such an important, like really unfortunate but critical moment in my life that like was necessary, and I'm oddly very grateful for, because I spent 2 years being like, I'm a rock climber. Like my identity is a rock climber. I talk about it, I think about it, I dream about it, I do it. I wasn't even that good. Like, let's be honest. And I got so wrapped up in it, it had gotten to the point where I wasn't even having fun anymore, but I didn't know what else to do. So it was like, I'm a rock climber. I have to rock climb, even though I wasn't having fun. And so when my climbing accident happened, I couldn't walk for a bit. And it also really messed my back up to where I couldn't climb. And I was also really scared to climb. And
Hmm.
so I lost a lot of friends because my community was based on my activity and not my depth of like caring.
Hmm.
Um, and all of a sudden I was like, I can't walk. I all my friends are gone. And like, who am I? And it feels like the year to 2 years after my rock climbing was really just like working on being okay with my identity as whatever I create it to be, not what other people think I am. And so like if other people think I'm a rock climber, I held so tightly onto that I then identified as a rock climber. But now it's like I just am gonna do whatever makes me happy and makes other people like brings other people joy, because I love bringing joy into other people's lives. But yeah, it really rocked my sense of identity, because I was like, who am I if I can't rock climb? And then it made me face a lot of deeper questions that were like, what am I what how can I be a better person to myself and to other people? And I see it a lot in the outdoor community. And it's funny because it's like we're all trying to escape from normal society. And capitalism literally teaches you that you're only effective if you do one thing. If you're an accountant, if you're a I don't know, if you are a math teacher.
Yeah,
And you see that in the outdoor industry. So it's like this system that we're in, this like capitalist system that we're in, is totally pervading this subgroup of us in the outdoor community that are trying to escape from it.
totally.
And I know that's probably like sounds totally tangential, but it's like we ultimately just get to choose the life that we want to live. And I think a lot of people get stuck in what the world is telling us to do instead of what we actually want to do.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard to get out of, because like if you don't have a freak accident, then, or something that
Yeah,
rocks your world a little bit, it's like, yeah, we can totally get stuck in that. And
totally.
how do you feel like there was a shift in the way that you then also went about friendships after that? Because you were saying that you feel like you lost a lot of friends when you had to exit that space.
Yeah, I had to learn how to set boundaries, which is terrifying.
Hmm.
I remember that was like a big thing in my life, because I think I just used to I was a chronic people pleaser, as they say. So like my accident, it not just like helped me, reshape my identity or let go of my identity actually as a rock climber. Um, but it helped me work on, like really choosing who I want to be in my life based on like our compatibility as friends, or our not just like the one activity that we both love. Like, is
Hmm.
is this person, are they a good listener? Like, if like, are we gonna help each other out? Are we gonna support each other? Um, and yeah, it really reshaped how I approached friendships and relationships too. Um, yeah, I definitely had to learn how to set boundaries, and that was really scary.
Yeah, and boundaries are big, but yeah, it's scary because it's like, and especially like with sport and like if you're all living in your vans and like doing the same thing every day, it's like, like even figuring out that you have to set boundaries is huge
Right.
because everything just like merges together
Yeah.
where it's like we eat the same food, we cook the same, like
Yep.
we sleep in, so yeah, no, that's totally hard.
Yeah, or like being like, like you're camping with a bunch of people and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh man, like I'm really overwhelmed." And like asking yourself what you need and being like, "Hey guys, I need alone time."
Mm-hmm.
Like that, like saying that is hard sometimes, especially like in the van camping community where you're like, "I'm gonna camp by myself tonight."
Yeah.
Yeah. But you don't think it's scary and then you say it for the first time and you're
And
like,
you're like, oh my
"Hey guys."
goodness. Yeah, totally. Yeah, no, all scary things. But yeah. Okay, continuing on kind of like as on that theme of lifestyle, career, big trip that's coming up. What is it that like you what is it that you really I think you kind of were answering this question of like what is it that you really like right now, but also like on the more like emotional side of that, besides like being able to just wake up and go and venture and do whatever, like what other aspects of that are you like both like happy for right now, but then also just like really excited for going into the future, and like what does this kind of like next phase look like for you,
Mhm.
or and like what is that dream?
Yeah. So my dream has always been to like combine my love for the outdoors and adventure and like adventure sports with climate activism.
Hmm.
And I kind of did that on the Dirtbag Diaries episode I was on, where we made a bike route that visited all of the proposed mining sites in the Sierra. And we did that all by bike. And so that was like I did that, and I've had this dream for years. And recently, like talking to you and my friend Bella, it was kind of like, oh my God, like I just need to make this happen. Like I can't wait for Patagonia to sponsor me. I can't wait for some filmmaker to be like, I want to make a video of you biking. And it's like, how do we do the work that we love, protecting the environment and standing up for like communities that are under threat from climate change or whatever, while also living the life that we want to live. And so that for me is like the next step and it's like part of what I'm envisioning for my Patagonia and like South America trip is getting to meet people down there that are impacted by um like climate change or capitalism and extractive industries and that stuff, and getting the chance to share their story and really connect with people while also doing the things that I love, like biking and pack rafting and traveling. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I'm going for it.
Yeah.
And I've been dreaming about it for years and just kind of like waiting for something to happen. And it's like, no, like I gotta make this happen. And I'm gonna do it. And yeah, we're all doing it. And it's very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and like speaking of stories, I mean, part of yeah, this whole podcast is really to bring these stories up so that we can listen to them and be inspired.
Yeah,
Because I feel like there are so many conversations that I have with women in particular that I'm like, holy cow, like just listening to your story and listening to the ideas that you have and like just being able to like bounce off of each other are so inspirational. And
totally.
and it just yeah, and I feel like that's if we're if we have these visions for our lives of like this is what I want to do and this is what I want my future to look for, sharing these is so important. Um, so to kind of end this, what do you feel like have been some of the most important and like inspirational conversations that you've had with people that have like made you who you are in a way and like gotten you like had that light bulb go off where it was like oh my gosh, wow, that was such an insane conversation and like yeah.
I think like I feel like a lot of us women feel like alone and in the outdoor industry. And yeah, we do adventures together, but it's like I think really like me and my friends are starting to talk about this now instead of like 6 years ago. And
Yeah.
that's really cool. And I also think like just the way people are having conversations is changing in general. Like these are issues that people are talking about on a larger scale. So naturally we're having conversations about them and sharing our like experiences as women in the outdoor industry. Um, I feel like talking to my friend Bella, and I've known Bella for 7 years now. Um, and we've always just like chatted about this and talked about like our horror stories, like going on adventures, like going on adventures with men and then being like telling them we're scared and they're not listening to us, stuff like that, where we're just like, oh, these are the frustrating things. And
Yeah.
then Bella and I recently like started talking about starting our business together, and then like I met you and like we were all on the same page, and so that's been really recently, that's been really inspiring to me, and it's just like, oh my god, we just got to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
um and I think like as you get older, your parents get older, and recently I've really become really grateful for my dad and the conversations that we had and growing up. And it's kind of funny you forget about those. Like I went to my yoga training and I came back and I called my dad and he was like, oh, are your chakras aligned? And I was like, Dad, you know what chakras are? And he's like, of course I know what chakras are. And I just remembered that like who I am as a person is so much due to him, because he
Mm-hmm.
loved fishing and he loved being outside and he loved farming, and he still loves these things. He's not dead. um like my dad was giving me like beatnik poetry and like Jack Kerouac, right? Yeah, on the
Mm-hmm.
road. He like gave me that book when I was like 12, and so really remembering that like the foundation of who I am is because of him. And that's really cool. And my dad, like, at one point, he told me this story where he took off from New Jersey to the Everglades with $200, and him and his friend canoed around the Everglades in Florida, and all they ate were like peanuts and raisins because they didn't have enough money. And then they hitchhiked back to New Jersey. And it's like, okay, of course I am who I am because of my dad and the
Yeah.
stories that he told me. And I think
Totally.
that recently I've really come to appreciate that and recognize like in, how much of my life is the way it is because of him.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. Even though, he's a guy and he's not a woman that's inspiring me, he's my dad, and like he gave me the foundation for this wild, crazy adventure I'm on.
Yeah. Yeah, and parents can do that because it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, they're who we're around the most at the most
totally.
formidable parts of our lives.
Yeah. And then I just like all the films about like in the winter when it's dark and you go skiing for the day, and then just like all these films that are coming out about women in the outdoors has really been inspiring too. And
Mhm.
Mammoth, like the community in Mammoth is just filled with women doing badass stuff all the time. And also they
Yeah.
have a career, and like, yeah, I'm just surrounded by women here that are really inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seeing people live it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that you want to leave people with?
I don't know. I'm just like really excited about life, and I'm excited for your journey with this whole experience and how we like, we can all work together on this stuff. And I think it's cool that like I'm just really excited that we're all just kind of going for it right now.
I
And
know. I'm excited
yeah,
too.
it brings me a lot of joy.
I know. Yeah. Very, very excited. Yeah.
Yay.
Yay. Well, that's perfect. Yay.
Yay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I
I
know.
hope the audio was
I think it's
okay.
good. I was testing it out earlier today because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have a very great computer. And then like I tested it and I was like, oh, I think it's okay. I feel like my video stuff is also not that great, but I was like, oh, I don't really care about the video piece of it, so it's perfect.
Yeah, and I'm like in my van, like I'm like you can see
Yeah,
my
no, it's
my
literally
nose,
perfect. Yeah.
but yeah, and we can always do like we could like do as many of these as you need, and then we
No,
could
this
like
was so perfect because I feel like yeah, I was like thinking about it all this week and I was like, oh, or not all this week, it's Monday. It's felt like a week though.
I
I
know.
got back, I like drove back on what day did I drive back? I drove back Friday. Nope, I got back Saturday. I officially got back Saturday. I drove to Bend on Thursday, got back Saturday. And then woke up at 3:30 this morning to drive to Portland. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so ready to go to bed. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I was like writing stuff down and then I was like trying to like audio message it down and then I kept stressing myself out. And I was like, you know what? Like I just need to like,
Go
you
for
know,
it.
do the interview and like
Yeah.
figure out like what I'd rather do better in the future, you know? And so I think like now I'm like, okay, I feel like I have a solid list of how I would probably do that. So
Well,
that's
and I feel like it was cool because it felt like it sounded like a podcast. Like
totally.
halfway through, I was like, I almost was like, we should start a podcast. But I was like, wait, that's what you're doing right now. Because it's that like it sounded like
No,
perfect.
totally. Well, and like, yeah, I was thinking about it more today too, and it's like I think just leaning into like the conversational side of it too is just so cool because it's like, yeah, like just recording conversations is epic, you know?
Yeah, and then it like because a lot of the Dirtbag Diaries ones are like very structured.
Yeah,
Uh, and I kind of like the conversation ones because then like
me
silly
too.
stuff gets said and it like feels more human and
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hell yeah. I'm
Yeah.
gonna call Bella maybe tomorrow.